Hi, welcome to The Wire. Today we have with us Executive Director of Center for Science and Environment, Anumita Roychowdhury, and we will be discussing the issue of air pollution, which impacts Delhi and surrounding areas around this time of the year. Welcome to the show, Anumita. So, right at the beginning, I would like to ask you every year around this time, when farmers are shifting from, say, paddy cultivation, they've harvested their paddy and they're moving towards sowing wheat. We have this problem of air pollution, as in a lot of farms across North India, especially in Punjab, Haryana, parts of UP, as also in Delhi. Farmers resort to burning the stubble and the farm residue. And this leads to a spurt in air pollution. So, would it be correct to blame the farmers alone for this, or are there some government policies also which give them a very small time frame to shift from one crop to the other, and which forces their hands and makes them burn their fields?
Yes, Gaurav, so let's understand the science behind this problem that we see every year first. We know that from October onwards, this is the inflection point when we suddenly see the air turning gray, right? We're just emerging out of the monsoon. Now, that's happening, as we all understand today, is very clear that this is the time of the year as winter sets in, the wind gets calmer, the mixing height of the wind, how high the wind is going to rise to disperse, that gets lower. It begins to get colder. All of this means that the air is getting trapped very close to the ground level, close to our nose level. And if air is trapped, whatever pollution is happening in your city is also getting trapped. And then on that, the icing is if the pollution is also coming from outside, like the farmers burning the crop. So if we have understood that science, then let's keep in mind that fighting winter pollution is not about the farmers. It's also about all other sources of pollution that's happening, continuous pollution. And that's why also make a very critical distinction between continuous source of pollution and episodic pollution. And farmers burning the stubble after harvest during this time is episodic. This is not a continuous pollution throughout the year. This is going to happen now, and as you've rightly said, that when farmers have to change the crop now, and they have a very small window, and just understand the double whammy here. On the other one, at one level, the environmental concern over depleting groundwater level in Punjab that delays the sowing period for paddy. And then that also delays the harvesting. And when they harvest, they have little time left to sow the new crop. And therefore, the fastest, easiest way to get rid of that stubble is to burn it, right? So that's why you see this intense burning happening. And this is something that we need to address, just not because what it's doing to Delhi's air. That's too elitist. Yeah. It's fouling up the air of the northern India, the Indo-Gangetic plain, and also fouling up the lungs of the farmers. There's a whole local health impact. So let's understand from farmers' perspective, if they are become more aware of what it's doing. One, what it's doing to the air, what it's also doing to their own soil. Because now science is also pretty clear that when you burn, that damages and destroys the micronutrients, the whole microflora in the soil gets more brittle, fertility erosion increases. So it's also hurting the farmer. The burning is not just about Delhi lungs.
This brings us to the issue that recently a lot of leaders, scientists, they've pointed out that when you burn your fields, the topsoil gets damaged, the micronutrients, as you said, they get damaged. Plus, you are denying yourself the right to avail of nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and sulfur, which are there in the straw and which you can probably avail of if you were to bury that straw in your soil. But farmers say we don't have the kind of money to invest in implements required for this, and this would take time. Recently, Indian Agricultural Research Institute also came out with a Pusa decomposer, which helps expedite this process. And Delhi government took some initiatives in that regard. They said we'll help prepare the solution and help farmers in Delhi, like spread it over 700-800 hectares of land where this shifting of crop takes place. But in Punjab and Haryana, the problem is larger. More money is required over there. How do we move ahead with this? Because it's been like almost a decade now that we've been talking about it, but very little has been happening on the ground.
Gaurav, first of all, we understand the solutions today. It took some time to figure out what the solutions are. But when we look at the solution, these are not easy solutions, right? Now we have figured it out that the farmers, instead of burning the straw, they should mix it with the mulch it in the soil and therefore regain the nutrition for the soil. And for that, now we know that the machines are available, and that's what the government is trying to subsidize. And Punjab government has subsidized up to 80% of the cost of the machine. Now we also have some numbers that perhaps Punjab has close to 50,000 machines, Haryana has another 20,000 machines. But question is, one, yes, making the machines available. But the second is even bigger challenge. How do you ensure that each and every farmer, and especially the small and the medium farmers, can have access to the machine on time and at affordable rental? Now they are trying to do that through panchayats. The machines are getting registered. I believe all the machines have not been registered yet, but through that registration process, now panchayats have to ensure the last mile. That are they being able to connect the millions of farmers that you're talking about? And look at the numbers, not small. We are talking about almost 38% of the paddy crop area in Punjab burning. Okay, another close to 18% in Haryana, that's burning. It's a vast tract.
Is it 32 million hectares in all? 32 million hectares?
About. So okay. Now in that case, now imagine the kind of capacity that the administration requires, a kind of outreach, communication, awareness, and the systems for that last mile connectivity with each and every farmer. And that's where we are slipping, that how, especially the small farmers, how will they get access to this machine and spend money on it to do that? So that is where we are facing the challenge today. The solutions are known, and it's just a question of scalability. How do we achieve the scale in implementation with absolute rigor and discipline? And this is not an action that you can do with punitive action. That doesn't work. So you need incentive, but you have to facilitate and enable the farmer. And for
But what I want to ask you is, why is it that the situation is deteriorating every year? This year, I was reading the scale of farm fires. It's gone up over 3 times in Punjab and over 70% in Haryana. So what is it over last year that has changed so much that more and more farmers have now resorted to burning their fields?
We have to figure it out. It's a little early to say that, but the very unique trend that we are noticing this year is that the early burning. Normally, this kind of burning doesn't start around this time of the year. It begins it's largely late October and beginning of November. But this year, it's happening early. Now, we do not, so therefore, certainly the numbers are higher for this time of the year, if you compare it with the corresponding time last year. But whether overall burning is going to be higher or not, that we have to wait for the season to get over. Okay. Now, in a way, it's good. I'm glad that they're burning now, if they're burning at all, that they should not, is because the weather is still not that bad. We still have wind, Yeah. Imagine this burning happening beginning of November when the weather is going to be absolutely adverse. In fact, globally, it's a huge problem. Globally, like you go to California, they also burn their stubble, right? Yeah. Rich farmers. But they have forecast for the farmers that when there's going to be good wind in which direction, and on that day they can burn, right? Mm-hmm. So in a way, it's good they're burning now when we still have the wind and the direction for it, right? But whether it's going to be overall higher compared to last year or not, that we have to wait and see. Maybe this year they sowed earlier, which they normally, we do not know. Like some field investigation is needed there. But this certainly needs to be managed better.
2 points I remember you mentioned last year as well one was that now when much of the farming is mechanized, a lot of straw is left, and that is a major issue. Secondly, you had also spoken about how efforts are being made to make pellets for with that farm residue, and so that those could be used in industries and small furnaces and elsewhere. So, what is happening over here? Can we change this pattern of harvesting, and can we and is this use of farm residue, is this happening? Has it made more progress over the past year?
So that's one thing we are a little bit more optimistic this year, even though this season we are not going to find that magic bullet. But what the good thing is that at least the process has started. So in addition to that in situ solution of mulching the straw in the farm itself, right? The ex situ solution that we are talking about today is that how do you use that straw to produce something else so that you can add value to the straw and therefore to the income of the farmer. And what good thing has happened now, at least Punjab and Haryana, they have set up power plants. So the power plants are picking up the biomass and they are using that for power generation. And the very interesting development which has happened, because all the clearances have happened and the process has started, the oil companies, IOC, coming forward to set up these plants to produce bio-CNG, right, from the stubble. We have heard about IKEA talking about furnitures. And so the whole question is that it is possible to create a new value chain around the straw, right? And that will be a great development because then you're adding economic value to the straw and therefore the farmers will have an economic incentive to not to burn that. Now, at this moment, we have just started and the biochar, etc., whatever, the pellet, whatever you make. And also it's interesting, I must tell you, when we recently did a review of the industrial belt in the NCR, it's very interesting how they're changing, because now with the pollution control tightening, how they are now switching from coal to using agro residue as a fuel. You know, so that is going to be another pull factor for the straw. Now, this is interesting, but then to make that successful, we need a very good collection and transportation system, because from the farm to wherever they need to go. At this moment, it is expensive to transport that straw from the farmland to wherever they need to be taken. Now, that's where government will have to pay some attention. Now, even though private sector, whoever is doing, they should also organize. It should be market-driven as much as possible, but you still have to enable. So that if the balers, now the second machine that we're all talking about now, the balers to the farmer, so that straw can be baled, compacted, and be transported, right? This is going to be a very important development, and we hope that if that takes off, then that's a circular economy you are talking about around the waste. You know, then it's no longer a waste that you need to burn and dispose of. So that's where we need the inventiveness, we need business model, we need the corporate imagination to come in.
There was also this issue of like paying the farmers 250 rupees per quintal of paddy, which was opposed by environmental activists like your organization. What was the reason behind that?
You know, if you have to put in money to enable and support, you have to ensure that the subsidy delivers on its intended objective. You know, we are given these numbers like last year, if I'm correct, you know, we have heard about 30,000 crore being spent just to give money to the farmers. And it's like a bottomless pit. You put that money and where does it go, right? And it's kind of a purpose incentive. I mean, how do you even ensure that I've taken the money and I've not burnt my stubble? How do you ensure that you give this small amount of money, but suppose if the machine is not available to that farmer, he's still going to burn it, right? So this is not a well-designed subsidy it's a badly designed policy. Rather, if that 30,000 crore gets invested in the real solution, in the real system that enables the farmer, then you get a better bang for that money that you are spending. So instead of having this kind of populist kind of a political agenda that I put on money as if like it's like buying a vote kind of an agenda, right? It doesn't work that way. You have to enable the system in place.
Can we make the panchayats more, since the panchayat system works in this as far as resolutions and all go, can they be made responsible? Like, can they be made responsible to ensure that the machines are brought in over there in time and then utilized by farmers in their area on time? Like right now, it's probably at block and district level. So should that be subdivided to the panchayat level? Will that be more effective in this? Like where they ensure that all the machines are in place and farmers use them.
Exactly. And, more or less, that's a kind of strategy that is being adopted. And to be very fair to the state governments as well, because we have seen the kind of data, and it's good to see Punjab government and Haryana government, how they are tracking the data as well, that how many panchayats they have been able to reach out to, how many machines have been registered with the panchayats. That data exists. So it's out there. Now, it's also true that it has not been possible for the governments to reach out to 100% panchayat, but at least more than half have been reached. But that's why the system that they're trying to work out is that you do a good registration of that machine, panchayat level, panchayats create a roster, and then do that, ensure that it reaches to each and every farmer. Now here, of course, there are a lot of teething challenges at the ground level, that how do you create that roster? How do you ensure that the small farmers are being able to afford? Because even if it's a small rent, so is that the devil is in the detail. And the detail is too complex at this moment. So tracking that and getting that done on ground, but panchayats are the focus point even now, but it's not how well you do it.
Now coming to Delhi, Anumita, every year we see this blame game happening over pollution. Delhi says all our pollution is coming in from other states. Recently, Prakash Javadekar said, Union Environment Minister, that only 4% of the population came from outside. CPCB data said it's around 22%, which is of the pollution of Delhi is actually because of these farm fires. And last year, when we had discussed it, the data was that around when pollution was at its worst in Delhi, around 44% of the load was because of other states, because of this very farm residue burning. So apart from this, like all of you environmentalists and all, you've been saying that Delhi still has about 65 or 70% of its pollution is its own problem and it needs to address it. What is the exact situation and what is being done to address it?
This science is getting quite clear now. And what are the estimates that exist today? And so one is where SAFA, that is the government's own agency, that is tracking this contribution. And we know from the previous winter that on a daily basis during this season, contribution, depending on the direction and the speed of the wind, contribution can vary between 4% to 30% or a bit more, right? But that's not every day. And so that's what we need to keep in mind. So therefore, on a very bad day, if things are absolutely against us, then about 30% or more can be contributed by the farm fire. But the rest of the days is 4%, 5%. So which means that the rest of it is local. And farm fire, as I said, is episodic. It's only this month, the second half of October and first half of November. Now, we have done the detailed analysis of air quality data, and we find that during winter, when you have very severe smog episode during Diwali and also when the farm fire happened, then of course the farm fires are contributing to it. But post-farm fire, end of December, early January, when we again get very bad severe smog, that episode can sometimes be even worse than the early November episode. right?
Okay.
And that's not farm fire. So that clearly shows that when the trapping is happening, local pollution is getting trapped, and we have to focus on local pollution. Now, for that, we have to now look in Delhi NCR that what are the key sources of pollution. A lot of things have happened in Delhi. We have to give credit for that as well. But even after doing all of that, if you simply say that perhaps Delhi is the only city so far in this country that has shut down all coal power plants, that the only city with the clean fuel policy, moved entire public transport to CNG, natural gas has expanded in its legal industrial areas, truck restrictions have happened, the better fuels have come, BS6 technologies here. Now, with all of that, data is also very clear that in Delhi, on year basis, pollution levels are actually coming down. Delhi has bent the pollution curve. But even after that reduction, Delhi still requires another 60% reduction to meet the clean air standard. Now imagine what is the scale and stringency of action that is needed for that cleanup, which all of us have collectively understood during the lockdown. That what is the scale and speed of action that we require to say that, yes, we now have blue sky. So in Delhi, therefore, if you look at what are the still big gaping holes that we still have not been able to fix, one is the transport sector pollution. Even though we have moved to BS6 standards, technology has improved, but we have not been able to deal with the volume of traffic because public transport infrastructure is deficit, hugely deficit. And therefore, the dependence on personal vehicles is increasing. The second big area where we have not been able to fix yet is the waste management, because the municipal systems needed for complete 100% collection of waste and safe disposal and recycling, neighborhood by neighborhood, including unauthorized colonies. That system is not in place. And therefore, waste accumulating in public space is the potential burning ground. The third big area is that even though Delhi has already the only city in this country to have notified its clean fuel policy, the approved fuel list, and Delhi technically does not allow coal today, does not allow petcoke, furnace oil, any dirty fuel. But the large number of small-scale industrial units in illegal, unauthorized areas and otherwise, very difficult to monitor them. Now we need a system. And how do we ensure that only clean fuel comes to Delhi and to these industrial areas? Now, these are some of the big ticket action that we still have to do in Delhi. And that's why we are saying, please don't let this winter pollution distract attention from the real change that must happen on ground, the systemic changes that must happen on ground.
So when it comes to this, two other areas are construction dust and related to construction and debris. So I believe a lot has already been done about that. But like recently, Delhi government pointed out there was hardly any construction happening right now. So all this pollution, they said, is probably because of the other states. So when like last week when the pollution really spiked. So like when it comes to solutions, we know all this needs to be done. But how will we do it? We've already reached, now it seems we've reached a level where all the imaginable things we've done, but that has only reduced the pollution to around 65% of that level. Where, but how do we bring it down further from here? It's becoming, sounds very tough.
So that's it. So we have reduced. So Delhi's overall pollution is down by 25%, but Delhi still has to reduce by yet another 60%. Now just imagine, to get that 25% reduction, you had to shut down power plants, you had to come up with a clean fuel policy, stop trucks, ban old vehicles, do natural gas. So much has actually happened. Now imagine what more will you do for that next 60% cut, and how much more disruptive that has to be. You know, that's what we need to keep in mind. Now, therefore, what is very clear at this moment, that we have to go sector by sector. One, within Delhi, and in Delhi, as I said, public transport, mobility is a one very big investment area that we still have to do a lot more. Industry and the waste sector. And as you said, the construction And another thing is in the construction, Delhi has taken some very interesting steps. So Delhi is the one very few city which is now does have a recycling facility where it can collect the construction and demolition waste, take it there, make new material out of it and bring it back to the construction. Now this entire loop has to be closed and expanded. Now therefore understand what kind of system changes we are waiting for and at what scale. And once Delhi fixes all of it, right, that will certainly give us a lot of things. And the hotspot action that Delhi is looking at right now, which is very important, that where you actually identify local hotspots and see what is going wrong there, and then deal with it at the local level. And when we have done that review, we have found a lot of this problem because of unpaved roads. Because take an area like Sanjay Gandhi Transport Nagar, where you have unpaved roads and 12,000 trucks flying on that unpaved roads. So the dust, or the open burning, or where you have the plastic recyclers. So they're doing a great job of recycling plastic in Mundka, Bhavana area. But then even that has plastic waste that you cannot further recycle. And that plastic waste is accumulating in the open. And imagine thousands and thousands tons of that plastic being burnt in the open, right? Now you need to crack down immediately, tie them up with the incinerator so that they can be safely disposed of. So these are the system design that Delhi government has to pay attention to. And then once all of these things are fixed in Delhi, then the big and a very larger question, that's for the central government. What is very clear to us from the lockdown, that only city-specific action is not good enough. You need a regional approach. During winter, when Delhi is so polluted, it's just not Delhi. It is the entire Indo-Gangetic plain. And the entire Indo-Gangetic plain where towns which otherwise have pollution levels much lower than Delhi also experience pollution levels as bad as Delhi. This is because we are now part of this chamber where there is no ventilation. And everything is getting trapped not just inside Delhi, but across the Indo-Gangetic plain. Now, if the government does not have a plan at a regional scale, with multi-governments and the multi-state governments taking and doing coordinated action, then we will not be able to fix it. In fact, Delhi NCR and the stubble burning is one of the biggest message and the learning curve for the rest of India, that why we need to take a regional approach. And I'm glad today that the comprehensive action plan that the Supreme Court has notified, it's not meant only for Delhi, it's meant for the Delhi and NCR, involving 4 state governments. That's the approach we require. And stubble brings another couple of governments into the fray, right? So that has to be the larger blueprint, and that's also the lesson from the lockdown. The reason why we saw blue sky during lockdown is not because just Delhi cleaned up. It's because the regional influence, because the entire country had cleaned up, so the regional impact on local pollution could be minimized. That science now has to inform the National Clean Air Program.
My final question to you is, you mentioned Supreme Court stepping in. Supreme Court has, through the mandated Environment Pollution Prevention and Control Authority, EPCA, been monitoring the situation for quite some time now. And recently, former Justice Madan B. Lakur, now he's been brought in to head a committee which would look into this issue. He's also handled this issue in the past. What are the expectations from him, considering, or what new do we expect from him, considering that he is aware of the situation, but at the same time, over the past decade, the situation really hasn't improved much.
So this particular Justice Lokur, and he is going to be looking very specifically at the stubble burning issue, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that is a very good opportunity, and because this whole focused approach, because he will have his full attention on that particular problem, and this is really therefore an opportunity to discipline and ensure that all the right systems are put in place for the scale of implementation that is required. So if you look at what has happened so far, so you can create a checklist that the central government has given subsidy, this state governments have given subsidy, some machines have arrived, some effort has been made to reach out to the farmer, but clear or that some plants are being set up to use the stubble, and for that both central government and the state governments taking action. But what you and I are worried about is that all of these are there on the template of the or the blueprint of the action, but how do you bring that granularity from the field, from the ground, to ensure that the right systems are put in place for that last mile connectivity to cover each and every farmer? That is the challenge that we are looking for. We are not looking for any new solution. That we can keep perfecting. New technologies can come, more chemicals can come to, for composting. That's, you can always bring into the system. But what is your system to reach out to each and every farmer? And how quickly can you scale up the alternatives and get the economics of this work even for the small farmer? That's where the challenge is and the catch is, and that's where we have to find the solution.
Okay. Thank you so much, Anumita, for providing us this beautiful perspective. And last year, we saw so many hazardous days in Delhi as far as pollution is concerned. This year, thankfully, because of the dispersed way in which stubble burning is happening and Diwali has got delayed, hopefully we won't see that kind of a situation. And we just hope that by next year, we are much better prepared to handle this air pollution we see every year.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
To receive instant updates on all videos from The Wire, click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon. Pay to support independent journalism. Click the link in the description and choose the amount you want to pay.